Hey everyone, today I wanted to give you some horror movie suggestions for this upcoming Halloween season. I've got a good selection here of 20 to 25 movies from different genres of horror, kind of some thrillers, even some action ones in there, and even some movies for kids. So I wanted to give a wide, group of genres, and so there's something for everyone, whether you're brand new to horror or you've been watching horror movies for years. I'll just briefly talk about these movies. I won't give any major spoilers away, just the basic plot. We'll go through them, and we're going to go alphabetically, starting off with one of my favorites, 1408. This is a Stephen King novel that was adapted into a movie. It stars John Cusack and Samuel L. Jackson. John Cusack is an author who has recently lost his daughter to leukemia, and ever since then, he has been trying to find any sort of existence of the afterlife in hopes he'll see his daughter again, and today he has found nothing. But he gets a letter or an invitation to see or to go stay the night in room 1408 at the Dolphin Hotel. He goes, and the manager, played by Samuel L. Jackson, tries everything he can to talk him out of this and tells him nobody's lasted more than an hour. And so, even though all of his different warnings, John Cusack doesn't take it seriously. He goes in the room and he quickly learns that this room truly is haunted and is evil. He has to kind of face his own personal demons, along with seeing all the people that have died before him in this room. So I think it's really good. This is one of the more well-known movies on this list, but I do think that's one that's worth watching at any time of the year. But I do enjoy it. I do usually watch that one at least once every year and a half, something like that. So. Next is a creature movie, kind of. Antlers. It has a creature in it, so it's definitely a creature movie, but it's also a movie that has a lot to do with just trauma and grief. So Kerry Russell is our main actress in it, and she plays a teacher, and she notices that one of her young students is very disturbed, and there's something not quite right about him. And she asks her brother, who's played by Jesse Plemons, who's a cop, to, tell her about his family. And she learns that the mother had died, and now the father, who was a part of, I think, this mining. I guess they were a bunch of miners in this town that now this job has gone almost non-existent, and that was what the town was known for, has been kind of moving drugs. And so she's been trying to look out for him, but she then quickly realizes that there's something more to what's going on with this little boy than just a broken home. So this is a really good creature movie that came out in 2021. If you missed it, I don't want to tell you what the creature is just in case you don't know, but it is pretty good, I think. And I think even just the cinematography of this small town in Oregon is really nice. But yeah, this has got a lot of gore and a lot of good shots in it. And I think a lot of it's practical effects too, and I think it really works. So I definitely recommend that one if you missed it. Next one, Autopsy of Jane Doe. This one, I'd say I'm not sure when this came out, probably about 8 to 10 years ago, something like that. But it's about a body that shows up at this morgue who are run by this father and son. And as they're doing the autopsy, they quickly realize something's not right. There's things being found in the body, but there's no bruises on the outside. It's like she's dealt with all this trauma, but there's no scarring or no marks or anything. And then things start going weird, there's some supernatural things going on around them. And it's really interesting. If you haven't seen this one, also, I definitely recommend it. It's one of the creepier ones on here, and one of the songs that they play in this kind of sticks in your head, and they do a really good job of making a kid's song really creepy. So I really like that one. Next, I wanted to throw this one on here just in case you were a fan of Longlegs. This is made by the same director, Osgood Perkins. That's the Black Coat's daughter. This is my favorite of all of his movies. Longlegs was really good, but this still is my favorite. But they're pretty close. So I feel like if you liked Longlegs, this is completely different, but it's still really good. It does actually have one of the same actresses in it. I forget her, Kiernan Shipka. She was in Longlegs for a short scene, but she's the main actress in this one. And she's this young girl who's, I believe it's either high school or some sort of boarding school. And her parents are supposed to pick her up for the Christmas or holiday break, and when they never show up, she kind of realizes that she's now on her own. She doesn't really have any friends. Nobody seems to like her. And when something demonic befriends her, she accepts it and then kind of becomes possessed and lets it take her over. So this is a slower paced one. So if you're okay with the pacing of Longlegs, you'll probably be okay with this. But I would even say this one's a little bit slower. This is one of my favorites also. There's plenty of movies on here that I really enjoy. So I wanted to pick some of my personal favorites. And then some of them, like this next one that I'll get into, that I don't particularly love, but I do want to recommend for people who probably haven't seen it. So this next one is called The Canal. It's kind of a psychological movie, but I don't really know how to I describe it. I guess that's the best way to. It's an Irish horror, and it stars Rupert Evans. And so this movie, why I don't particularly love it, is it's pretty slow. Like, probably one of the slowest, if not the slowest movies on this list. I do enjoy it, but I've watched it twice, and I'm not really in a rush to watch it again anytime soon. But I did show this to one of my friends who usually doesn't like horror movies. Like, he's terrified of them, hates them. But he actually really enjoyed this. So that's another reason I wanted to throw it on there. So maybe it's just not my personal thing. But it's about a couple that they just buy a house, and then a few years later they have a young son. And one day the wife goes missing mysteriously after he catches her cheating. And then whenever it's discovered that she was murdered, there's kind of this investigation. So it's kind of a paranormal, psychological, like criminal movie. It's really hard to describe, but there's some weird stuff going on at the house. So maybe he thinks that there's something connected to her death there. And there's a lot of weird stuff that goes on in this. But what I did really enjoy about this is the last, I'd say, about 15 minutes. It gets into some really nasty body horror stuff that was really good. And then just the ending, it does something that a lot of horror movies don't really have the balls to do. And while they don't necessarily show it, you know what happens, and I think it's really good. So that part of the movie I really enjoy. I just think that it takes a little bit too long for me personally to visit it time and time again. Next is probably, to me, one of the most underrated movies, just period, but I love this movie, Censor. I watched it twice in like a week when I first saw it, and I really want to watch it again. And this movie is about a film censor she's on the board of censorship for the BBC. And this is during the 1980s when there was a lot of video nasties, and they were really strict about just censoring a lot of blood and gore and stuff. Well, when she was young, her sister had disappeared while they were both in the woods, and her parents kind of blamed her because she has no memory of it, and they kind of think that she's just not telling them something. Well, when she's watching one of these movies, she sees someone who looks exactly like her sister, and it kind of sends her down a rabbit hole into thinking that this whole conspiracy of something that happened to her sister. So I do want to share this, though. You get a lot of, like, I think that they're movie references in here, but so this comes with a little booklet, my Blu-ray, and it shows the movies that she watches during it. Some of them are pretty obvious. Some of them I'm not quite sure. Like this one, I'm not quite sure. The Beasts Within, or no, Beastman. I'm not sure what this is supposed to be a spoof of. It kind of talks about what it's supposed to, I think, cover. Okay, so it says it covers a wide range of movies like Last House on the Left, Flesh for Frankenstein, The Witch Who Came Home from Sea, things like that. And then this next movie, Asunder, you get a kind of like a brief little clip from. This is supposed to be kind of a few different movies. Snuff, I've never heard of. Killer Nun, yeah, I've never heard of these ones. And then there's like Inferno. I know Dario Argento's Inferno, The Boogeyman. So yeah, there's a lot of movies in here that they cover. Some of the more obvious ones, Cannibal Carnage is Cannibal Holocaust, and then Evil Dad is Evil Dead. So yeah, it's pretty obvious with some of these, but And then lastly, I forgot about this one. Has a really cool cover. I almost wish that was a real movie, Driller Thriller. This is, I think, based off of. I'm drawing a blank on the movie, but it's like a group of teenage girls that are being like hunted by a guy with a drill. This one doesn't tell me what it is, so I'm not quite sure. But yeah, anyway, really fun movie. It has a lot of different like references to other movies, and it's like an 80s throwback movie that I quite really like the setting of the 80s, and then just the whole story itself is really interesting. So next I wanted to throw on, this isn't really a horror movie, but it has the Halloween atmosphere taking place on Devil's Night, October 30th, and then Halloween itself, and that's the original The Crow with Brandon Lee. I wanted to throw this on here because the new one just came out, and a lot of people hated that one. I personally found it to be okay. It wasn't better than this by, it's not even close, but I still enjoyed it enough that there was things in it that I liked. So I feel like people were a little bit hard on it, but there was definitely some merit to a lot of complaints. But this one it just has the whole atmosphere of like Halloween, and it's very gothic, and I think it really works. So if you've never seen it, Brandon Lee was the main actor in it, son of Bruce Lee, and he was killed on set whenever their gun had, I think it was something, it was either a fake bullet or something was lodged in the gun, somebody hadn't cleared it properly, and when the gun went off, it shot into his chest and killed him. So that's primarily become his legacy, is this movie, and it's about a man and a wife who were brutally murdered just before their marriage, and or I should say a fiance. They were just about to be married, and on Devil's Night, a bunch of kind of gang members or criminals broke into their house, killed them, and a year later he comes back to life from this crow to avenge both of their deaths. So it's really good. I haven't yet seen this on 4K. This is, I think, the newest 4K I even bought. I bought it just before the new one came out. I wanted to rewatch it, but I never got around to it. I'm still going to rewatch it, but I'm going to actually save it for Devil's Night, since I've yet to watch this during any sort of Halloween season. It was just one day, I just gave it a watch, I don't know, 10 years ago, and then recently been kind of watching clips here and there, and I was like, I really want to watch that again. So next is a really good werewolf movie that not a lot of people watched. Came out 2 years ago, and that's The Cursed. And to be fair, the name is a little generic, but it was originally called 8 for Silver, and I think they changed it. And this is I think, to me, at least of the werewolf movies I've seen, definitely the most underrated and is my personal favorite. I don't know if I would say the best, just because a lot of people say American Werewolf in London, but for me, this is my favorite. So it's really brutal, really gory, and it starts off, I believe it's either World War One or Civil War, I can't exactly remember, but you see like a lot of like limbs being like cut off after the battle, and so it shows like a lot of gore stuff there, and then it cuts back, I think, like 20 years or something, and it's about this village who, a lot of the people who live there are rich white people, and when a bunch of gypsies move in, they really don't like people being on their land, and so they just go there and massacre them. Well, these gypsies set a curse upon all the families involved in their murder, and it brings about this werewolf. So Boyd Holbrook and Kelly Riley are in this, and they do a really good job. This is one that I feel like a lot of people missed out on, that I try and tell people, like, give this one a watch. So this next one, I have to be fair and tell you, while it's a very good movie, this is, if you're not up for, like, this is the darkest movie on this list by far. If you're not up for watching a movie with literally, like, not a moment of happiness, don't watch it. So, but if you're up for someone who's willing to, like, challenge yourself and, like, okay, I watch horror, like, personally, I watch horror movies all the time, and nearly nothing bothers me. Two things I don't like watching people do drugs, and I don't like watching animals die. I don't recall drugs in this, but you do see goats being slaughtered in this, and so, or sheep, I can't remember which one it is, but either way, I don't really like seeing it. you more see the aftermath of it, and it's all, I'm pretty sure most of it was CGI, or if it wasn't, it was just, you know, puppets or whatever anyway. But it's still, either way, I don't really like seeing animals hurt. So, but yeah, this is a very dark movie, and it's about a family who they're kind of distant with each other. They've never really been all that close. The father is on his like deathbed, and the mother doesn't tell the kids to come, but she says your father's sick, and she keeps telling them do not come, and they think that it's just her being, her normal self, like, oh, you don't have to bother. But when they show up, it's really there's something evil on their farm, and it kind of attaches itself to the whole family. So it's good. I'm not saying it's not, but it even says on the back, it's a movie about heavy sorrow, pure evil, a descent into nihilistic evil. So yeah, it's dark. So next is a World War I horror movie that came out in 2001, and it's called Death Watch, and it stars Jamie Bell and Andy Serkis. It's about a group of soldiers who, after a battle, go and take this German trench, and they decide to hold it because I don't actually remember the reason why they decide to stay there, but they have, I think, at least one German prisoner, maybe a few more, and then they quickly realize something's not quite right with this trench. They're seeing a lot of like disturbing things, like flashes of like, I guess, the undead, zombies, whatever you want. Not zombies like like Resident Evil or whatever, but they're seeing a lot of like undead things and flashes of things that aren't natural. So yeah, there's a lot of good body horror in this one. I actually wouldn't say body horror is the right word, but a lot of gruesome things that happen to the body, I guess, is people being wrapped up in barbed wire and ripped apart. My favorite scene in this is involving rats. I won't tell you too much more, but that is a very good scene. And then there's some just people going nuts. Andy Serkis at one point just goes absolutely insane. So yeah, pretty interesting movie. I think this is by Clive Barker, or at least it says he reviewed it. I don't know for sure. I don't know that much about this other than I've seen it a few times and I enjoy it. So next is The Forest, starring Natalie Dormer, and this came out 2015, 2016, something like that. Really kind of came out in like January or February. Nobody really watched it, but I actually find it to be pretty good for a movie that came out. Usually that's where they dump their crap for the year, but I enjoyed this one a lot. And this is about a girl she has a twin sister, and they experienced something traumatic whenever they were kids, and ever since then her sister has never quite been able to get over it, while she never really had that same experience because her sister got the full experience of it while she kind of was hidden away from it. Well, she is the teacher in Japan, and when she goes to see her sister, she learns that she has gone into the Okigahara Forest, which is known as the Suicide Forest. It's a real place at the base of, I think, Mount Fuji, and she tries to stop her from killing herself, but she's told to stay on the path, but if she goes off, she starts experiencing like these dark visions and ghosts and people that have committed suicide there haunting her. And so it's a good psychological like ghost movie, and I like to recommend it to people. This one I always love recommending to people, but most of the time I get a good reception. People are like, I really enjoyed that. A few times I have gotten, it's just a little bit too slow for me. But it is a good balance of psychological, paranormal, and kind of just some other weird things thrown in there. It's a little bit of a, what's the word? It's whenever a bunch of different stories are thrown together around a main story. I'm drawing a blank on what that's called. I could usually think of it right off the top of my head, but almost like a VHS or a creep show type of thing, but it's not quite like that. There's a main story and 3 stories that are connected to it. So make sure if you do want to watch this, there's another movie with the same name. This is from 2017. It stars Andy Nyman, Paul Whitehouse, Alex Lauder, and Martin Freeman. And this is about Professor Goodman, played by Andy Nyman. He has decided his whole life he wants to just debunk anything paranormal, anything religious. And whenever he gets I think it's like a letter with a tape in it that he's told to listen to, that he's got his like idol as a kid that did the same thing, who just mysteriously disappeared. He's like, I have these 3 cases that I can't explain, and I want you to meet me, talk about them, and then go meet those people and try and debunk them. And it connects back into his life, and so I think it's really good. Anthology horror is the word I was thinking of before. But yeah, it's a good anthology horror, and I really enjoy it. I really don't want to tell you too much, other than this movie impressed me a lot the first time I watched it, and then the second time it like doubled it, because there were so many little details that you might not see, such as even just a plastic bag floating by that has significance, or even numbers on a wall, just small little things. And like the tagline for this movie is something that I think, other than it telling you it at some point, the brain sees what it wants to see. It really does a good job of showing you something, and then later on showing it to you again in a different perspective, and it really just changes the whole movie, and I think it's really good. Another one of my favorites, Grave Encounters. This is one of I think I only have 2 found footage movies on here, but this is my personal favorite of them. And this is actually the movie that, if you did see it, I based primarily my horror short Necromont off of. I took this idea, mixed it with Blair Witch, and threw it together. And so this is about ghost hunting reality TV shows that, they're obviously fake. Some people believe them, but at least I personally think they're fake. Well, these people go to a psychiatric hospital that has been shut down. And when they go there, they quickly realize that this place really is haunted. And the main guy, Lance Preston, does such a good performance, and I based my character in that off of him. I didn't do a very good job. I don't think I did as good as I could, but I'm obviously not an actor. But yeah, if you have seen this, you know what I was going for. They were trying to copy off of, I can't remember the guy's name. There's a TV show that this was based off of, but yeah, I haven't seen it such a long time. But yeah, it's one of those like Travel Channel shows. But yeah, I wanted my movie to be basically that, because I love that movie so much, and I took the idea of Blair Witch, of Witch in the Woods, and threw them together. So next is a movie for people who are younger, who might not want to get into some really, not that I personally find any of these really, really scary, but yeah, something that's more lighthearted. It's a good mixture of comedy and horror. If you wanted to watch this with your son or daughter, or your niece or nephew, whatever. And most people know about this one, but it's The Haunted Mansion, starring Eddie Murphy. And like I said, it's a good mixture of horror and comedy. So I don't think at any point, I watched this whenever it first came out as a kid, and I never found it to be scary. So if you're not aware, basically, I'll just keep it short. Eddie Murphy's a real estate agent, and him and his family go to this house, and they try and sell it for the owner, and they get stuck there, and it's a haunted mansion. So yeah, pretty simple. Next is a kind of psychological thriller mystery movie starring Robert De Niro and Dakota Fanning. Came out around 2005 or so. And you, at the beginning of the movie, learn that Robert De Niro's wife has committed suicide, and has it's left them both feeling very empty, and they don't know where to go with their life. So they decide to move out into the country from the city. And the daughter, Dakota Fanning, is she went from being a very happy kid to very shut in, doesn't have any friends, can't seem to make any, doesn't really like anyone. But then she makes a new friend, Charlie, but it's something that disturbs Robert De Niro, because this isn't a normal friendship, and there's something wrong about Charlie. So yeah, if you've never seen this one, it's a good, I think it's more thriller than horror. It's It's got a few like jump scare moments, but I would never really call this straight up like horror. But I think it's good either way. Next is I Trap the Devil. This one is pretty unknown for a lot of like newer people that are just getting into horror. But if you're a fan of the Twilight Zone, this is, I believe, based off of an episode of that, The Howling Man, if you're aware of what that is. Same sort of premise where a man believes he has trapped the devil in his basement, and whenever his brother and his sister-in-laws, I believe what that's called, show up suddenly out of nowhere, he believes that the devil has kind of influenced them to try and get him out because he's realized over the time that the devil has been in his basement, crime has started to go down. Well, his brother is like, you're crazy, this isn't the devil. And the whole movie, you don't know whether he's just got some innocent guy who was unlucky trapped in his basement or he's really got the devil. So I think it's really entertaining, but I do feel like you have to be a little bit patient with this one. It's a little slow, but it is short. So, you know, if you start watching it and you're like, it's a little slow, it kind of keeps that pace for a lot of it, but I think that it's short enough that if you sit through it and you don't like it, it's not that big of a loss. I enjoy it, though. The Night House is the next one. This came out just a few years ago. This was one of my favorites from that year. Censor was another one that came out that year, and I really enjoy it. I've heard very mixed things. Some people enjoy it, some people don't. I found it to be very good. Rebecca Hall is our main actress, and after her husband unexpectedly has committed suicide, which seemingly is out of nowhere, he was never sad or depressed or anything. It was always her. She's kind of left with this just aimlessness in life. She doesn't really know where to go. And then she starts learning about things about her husband that she never knew. And she thinks maybe the spirit of her husband is still in the house when strange things start happening. So it's a really good movie. It was actually my number one movie that year until I saw Censor. They're both pretty even though. So I saw this one 3 times actually, twice in theaters and once actually at a drive-in. So I really enjoyed this one, and I've seen it even one more time since on Blu-ray. So I really enjoy it. This next one is with Robin Williams, and not quite horror, more thriller, but has some disturbing stuff in it. And this is called 1 Hour Photo. He's like a photo developer at like a Walmart type of thing back in, whenever they still had those like photo centers. I think they still do at some places, but he is kind of obsessed with this family, the Yorks, and he kind of has in his head that they're this perfect family. But then whenever he sees pictures of something from one of the family members that kind of breaks that idea in his head, he kind of loses it, and he doesn't know how to take it. He kind of just goes nuts, and his life starts to unravel. So Robin Williams is like completely different than his normal self in this movie. My friend who was like kind of skeptical and even watching this when he was done was like, that was a great movie. I've showed this to other people who really like it, and to date nobody has disliked this movie. So this is one that I find a lot of times people like. So I think it's a pretty good watch. Next, it's kind of well known at this point, but I still like to recommend it for newer people. The Others, starring Nicole Kidman. This one I saw when it first came out, and I almost wish I had seen it later in life because I remembered almost everything about it a few years later whenever I was like, I want to rewatch it. And I was like, I know the twist already, but I really like this one. It's a great ghost movie. So it's Nicole Kidman and her 2 children are staying at their house. It's kind of like mansion in the English countryside while the husband is off at war, and they need a nanny or at least somebody to help her take care of the house after their last one left. And so they hire these 2 older people and then a young girl. As soon as they arrive, some weird things start happening, and they believe that the house is haunted. And whether it's connected to these people or not, she's not sure, but it's really good. Definitely one that I would highly recommend if you've not seen it. And again, another movie that I've showed people that nobody has disliked. So I haven't yet seen this on 4K. This is the 4K Criterion. I really don't like like DVD cases for 4Ks. Like I like Blu-ray cases and the 4K cases for 4Ks. I don't know why. I've always hated that about Criterion movies. But one day I will watch this, and I might even try and like fit that to a normal 4K case because I've done that plenty of times. Anyway, next is Wreck. This is another found footage movie. This is a good zombie movie. This is probably, I would say, this and Grave Encounters to me are just by far the two best found footage movies. And I'm not really into zombie movies, but this movie is great. It's about a TV reporter and her cameraman who are supposed to just be spending the night at this fire station and just basically cover what they do while they get this call that a woman is trapped inside of her apartment. And when they go in, they hear they're hearing screams and something's not quite right, and they quickly realize that there's something wrong with this woman, and it's that there's an infection that's spread throughout the building, and it quickly just starts taking people out. And this is, to me, probably the best zombie movie that I've seen that I at least really like, and my second favorite found footage. Next is, I really love this movie. I always try and recommend it. I've loved it since I've watched it. Session 9. A lot of people have now kind of discovered this one, but for a long time I was telling people about it and nobody had even heard of it. So maybe by now you've heard of this if you're into horror, but if you haven't, this one, now go in expecting, this is a little bit of a low budget, and this was whenever one of the main actors, David Caruso from CSI Miami, was a little bit unknown, but it's got a pretty good cast here, and they all do a very good job on what their role is. It's about an asbestos cleaning crew that gets hired to clean out this, what was once actually a real hospital. It's called Danvers State Mental Hospital. And when they go there, the owner of this business has kind of, he had to, because he needs the money for his family, he's set their timetable to finish this job for a week, and it's a really big job, and it puts them all under a lot of stress. Well, this stress kind of does a lot to each of them differently, where one person just decides he just like neglects this, he doesn't care anymore. One of them's off, doing drugs, and not like anything heavy, just, weed, but still and then another one's decides he wants to go and just gamble. So, while that doesn't necessarily seem like it's horror, I purposely kept out what leads this into a horror movie, and I think is a very good horror movie. This is my second favorite horror movie ever. American Psycho is my number 1. This is number 2. My number 3 was on here. I'm drawing a blank. Let me find it real quick. Ghost Stories. That was it. Ghost Stories is my third favorite, so I wanted to throw those on here. I got 3 movies left, all different types of genres here. So next is another found footage. This is The Taking of Deborah Logan, and this is about a woman who is getting up into, she's got dementia, and she's kind of getting into the later stages, and this medical crew, or this medical documentary crew, want to cover this. And whenever they get there, it starts off, normal, where she's just forgetting things, but then it gets really strange. Like, she goes like outside and she's just digging holes with her hands, and she's screaming. She's up late at night walking around naked, opening up windows, or doing just like some strange things. But then it gets really dark, and if you've never seen this, the main actress who plays Deborah Logan, I'm not sure which one of these names it is. It's either Jill Larson or Anne Ramsey, does a really good job of this in this role. Like, when I first saw this, I was like, man, this is an underrated movie that I can't believe I missed when it came out. So next, this is the last Disney movie on here, but this is one I've always enjoyed. I saw this whenever I was in Disney for the first time. I was in 3rd grade, and the ride had just been like newer, and I went on the ride, and I was really never scared of rides as a kid, but this ride in 3rd grade like actually kind of scared me, and I love the atmosphere, and I always liked the Twilight Zone, and that being kind of a mixture of the two. They have the main host of the Twilight Zone, who I'm terrible at remembering names, Rod Serling, on the TV, kind of narrating the ride. So it's pretty good movie, but they based this movie off of the ride somewhat, and so it's about Steve Guttenberg and Kirsten Dunst are the two main actresses, or actresses, whatever. And then you have some other fairly well-known people in here at this point. Laura Harden from The Office is in here, who played Jan. But it's about this hotel that back in like the 1920s or 30s, there was a child star actress, her and a group of 4 other people went missing one night when lightning struck the tower. Their elevator crashed, but they were never found. And, like 40, 50 years later, whatever it's been, they go there and find that it is really haunted. So this is a Disney movie, so you're not going to get like some, major scares. But in 3rd grade, I watched this and I was like, oh, this is actually pretty good for a Disney movie, and one of the first horror movies I ever saw. So that one's, I think, good for family and, people of all ages. So, and lastly is The Void. This is a really good, can't think of the word, like cosmic body horror. There's a certain term that's used, and I forget. It's based off of an author's name, but I just said it. I'm bad with remembering names, but it's a good cosmic horror, and it's about a hospital that this officer brings this patient, or this guy who's kind of seems like he's strung out on drugs, to this hospital. And when he gets there, there's this cult that shows up and just won't let these people leave. And then suddenly people are going like nuts. This one nurse she kills a patient and stabs her eyes out. And then she kind of mutates into this creature. And this has like the practical effects of like The Thing. So if you like The Thing, if you've ever seen that, the like practical effects of that really carries over into this. It is very strange, and towards the end it loses me a little bit, but I do think I'd say about 85% of this movie, it's very good, and I think it really does a good job of both pacing and just the practical effects and just some nasty stuff. So those are the 20 to 25 movies. I recommend all of them, but there's some in there that I obviously told you, that I really enjoy, and then there's some that I'm like, that one's just okay. But I wanted to give you these now, so you have plenty of time to watch them, and hopefully you like them. If you find a few that you really enjoy, let me know in the comments. Which ones have you seen? Which ones do you want to see? Stuff like that. So I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you guys soon.